we're here. Rushing a little bit, so I apologize. Clean the screen off. Gotta clean my board off. Let's check in. How is everyone? How are all the things? And my laptop is dead. Of course. So with my laptop being dead, that means I have to bypass. Actually, no, I don't. Keep checking in with each other. Yeah, keep checking in with each other. Give me a second here. We might be able to do this. Just so that I can at least have the chat box up in front of me. Let me see here while I'm getting this over. How's everyone's day? Hey everybody, how's it going? See, I love all of the love that y'all give each other. It's so great. Ready for this class? Oh, I hope so. Listen, this class is gonna go in. This is probably one of my favorite weeks of the semester, just because of how controversial it is. All right. We've got our chat box up, so let's get going here. All right, welcome in everybody. All right. Oh, all right, so this is my sound check, I guess. Cool. I don't like having my stuff out. I'm very secretive about my work. We'll just put that over there. How about that? Does that work? Stuff mostly hidden-ish now. Yeah. Don't be trying to sneak tipsy my stuff. School's beginning to get heavy. Yeah, 'tis the season for that, right? For all of us, really. But it's vibes nonetheless. Love it. Relieved that my speech is over. Okay, you had a speech today. All right. I don't have class today. All right, yeah. Come on in, Julia. It's always good to see you. I love the community, man. I really do. I love how much we continue to chat and just check in, and it's real dope. All right. Well, this is last class and stuff, so we'll go ahead and erase that. What's going on in the world? What's happening in the world around us? What's going on out there? Y'all sound like you doing real good. Ready to have a good day. Ready to have a good class. I need Crystal to cut the back of my hair. Don't mind the back of my hair. Oh, thank you. Beauty supply store. I think I got them for like $1 or something like that. Okay. Boba, coffee, out here multitasking, watching you and watching my favorite show on Netflix. You know, you don't have to be here. If your favorite show is on, you can go watch your favorite show. My mom called out of work to watch the end of Shaka Zulu. Like back when they was doing like the series thing on TV. So they would air like special shows and things like that. So they aired like this, I don't know, was it like a 2 or 4 part series of Shaka Zulu? She got out of work to watch Shaka Zulu. Ever since then, I was like, you know what? Yeah, because that's self-care. Why not? So yeah, get out of here if you're trying to go watch your show. You ain't gotta be here. Order seafood and boba. I was following the LAPD officer's house raid story in Long Beach. Police are cleaning house. I mean, did we expect something different? It's gonna continue. I'm telling you, y'all gotta know what's going on in the world, right? So what's happening out there? So we know that there's a police raid going on, right, in conjunction with guns and drugs, trafficking stuff here in Long Beach, which Long Beach is a big spot for that because of the ports, right? We've got those ports here, and so that's a huge place for imports and exports and stuff. So, including things that are illegal. So surprise, surprise, right? What else is happening out there, though? What's going on in the world? What's happening in the world around us? Yeah, Tiger Woods. We're still trying to figure out what exactly happened with this, right? Last I knew, he was hospitalized. They had to get the jaws of life to get him out. It's just over in Palos Verdes, so it's like right around the corner. It's not far. But the car was totaled. I mean, the fact alone that he made it out alive, right? That's something. Getting the jaws of life to get him out, and they're talking about he'll never walk right again, and this, that, and the other, right? So there's a lot going on with Tiger. We don't really know if it was drug related or not. They said there was no alcohol, no drugs in his system. However, we also know that he had that issue with a DUI a couple of months ago, like a year or so ago, right? In Florida, he got pulled over. He was actually pulled over already because he was asleep in the car, but it was prescription pills, right? So we don't really know yet. Yeah, fingers are crossed for him. We hope that he's all right. Yeah, Daft Punk split up. We mentioned that last class too, and that's really important, right? Daft Punk is an old school folks, like techno type style, techno disco type style, but they're very influential in a lot of music across genres, right? So a lot of songs that you probably even listen to today probably have some Daft Punk influence. So that is quite the news. Kim and Kanye are getting divorced. Yeah, heard about that. Kim finally done putting up with his shit. Kanye is alright. He's just going through a lot, right? Kanye don't need to be married. He needs a therapist, and he need to stay there with the therapist and get help. And that's not even a joke. Like, I'm real serious. I honestly think that he needs mental health support that Kim can't give him. Trump's spot. Oh yeah, the golf course. Apparently, my Tiger was calm through the crash. Interesting. I don't know about calm. The sheriff was surprised. That's dope. This is probably high. I didn't mean dope in terms of he's doing dope either. I'm just gonna clarify that real quick. But I do think he was probably high on something, most likely prescription, because that, again, is the issue that we saw last time. He should have a driver, yes, but he's probably not as rich as we might imagine him to be, especially after all of the issues that he had with infidelity and drugs. Those are expensive. Forget that. The percent of Asian hate crimes are spiking. Yes, they are, and they've been spiking since the beginning of COVID, in particular, specifically against the elderly because of COVID. Right, exactly. I know it's not on topic of this class, but I wanted to spread awareness about it. No, it's very on topic for this class. Discrimination itself is on topic for this class. That's never far from what we're discussing. So feel free, like, share that kind of stuff. That's important. And again, right, race itself doesn't live in a monolith. Right, we've talked about that. We've talked about racism as a global phenomenon, right? And so addressing these issues is not ever going to look like just talking about Black folks. In the context of this class, in the context of the Africana Studies department, we tend to frame things more often than not in terms of the Black experience because A, it's our expertise, and it's kind of literally like what we do, right? We talk about Black people as a space of Blackness studies, right? So, point being, right, even think about this intersectionality piece. We can't say we're only going to talk about Black people and not talk about Asians. What about people like Tiger? This Black and Asian, They exist, right? So there's a constant crossover with things like discrimination and oppression and race and all of this. So all of that is always relevant to the conversation. Uh, Folks like to use Dr. Martin Luther King's words, right? Jr. when he said, "A threat to justice anywhere. Threat to justice anywhere is no injustice anywhere. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." There we go. That's the phrase. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so what does that mean? That means that we as a collective people who face discrimination or who see something that is wrong, right? Well, all of those things can easily impact you at some point, right? So it's our responsibility, our collective responsibility to engage those types of issues, whether or not we think that it's about us or whether or not we feel the impact of it. Because the bottom line is always going to be that wrong is wrong, period, right? So yeah, it's very relevant. He doesn't take his meds anymore. I don't know about that. Potentially a new Dr. Dre album is dropping. Yeah, where he's talking about the divorce and his recent stint in the hospital, all of that, right? Yeah. Kind of waiting to see that one. Court of Silver Flames came out. Oh, a book. Is this a documentary type of book? Is it a fantasy, a biography? What kind of book is this? A Court of Silver Flames. It sounds like something to do with our justice system. A Filipino man died because cops kneeled on his neck during a panic attack. Turns out he was a veteran with PTSD or something. So that's a great example of what I was just talking about. Here is an example, a concrete example of the same behavior that has happened to black folks that is now happening to someone of quote-unquote Asian descent, right? And so if we were not addressing the first issue, right, we collectively would not address the second issue. But because we've addressed the first issue, or at least we've been talking about it, we're not silencing ourselves about this first issue, right, the kneeling on the neck of George Floyd. Well, this is now why we're so interested in this one. Now it becomes a pattern, right? There's no pattern if people aren't speaking up about issues. So cross cultures, yes, we need to know what's going on. And mental health in general is very, very difficult, and one of the reasons why I'm in full support of defunding the police and divesting from police forces and moving them into community supports and things that are more trauma-informed and trauma-centered, trauma-focused, people-centered, period. People-centered, right? Because we're always going to be people first. I saw this from Insta and I reposted it. Can you share the post? It was recent. Oh, about him not doing drugs anymore. Yeah, I want to read that too, because I don't believe it. I mean, unless there was like a hit and run, like that's a possibility for sure. But so far there's no explanation whatsoever. Just suddenly his car is rolling, and the pictures are awful. I mean, it is terrible to look at. So I don't know about that. Potentially a relapse of some sort, or there are untraceable drugs too. So there was a drug that was going around in the military for a little bit called Spice. When Spice came out, it was completely undetectable. So folks in the military were doing this drug because they couldn't do marijuana because it was illegal according to the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice. So there are undetectable drugs out there too, right? So for me, I'm looking at behavior, I'm looking at patterns. I don't know. I have no idea what happened. But my speculation is there's something more to the story that we don't have. We don't know. Young adult fantasy book. Oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, I'll check that out. Speaking of drugs, El Chapo's wife was arrested yesterday. Yep, for her part in all of his stuff. Yes. And the courts came back today and said she has to stay in jail. They were like, we're not going to let you post bail. Like, you are El Chapo's wife. We don't really want you ripping around the streets. So you stay over there, right? What does that say about us? That's a great point. What does this say about us? We get excited when people like that get locked up, but then at the same time, we don't want the system that we have. So we're using it for convenience. Think about this. When people say, like, fuck the police, for example, right? I'm an avid person with this phrase, okay? I am a fuck the police 24/7. Fight the power, fuck the police, okay? Now, with that being said, when I call 911, I am intentionally asking for somebody who is not the police. How many people actually do that? We say we don't want the police, but then we also don't intentionally do things to not have access to the police, right? We keep them for convenience when it's cute, right? When we need something, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, let's call the police. Call 911. Still risky, right? But we forget about that risk because we have a need in that moment. So think about that. Like, what does it say about us if that's the behavior that we're engaging in? If you are one of the people that says fuck the police, your house gets broken into, you call 911? Is it fuck the police then? Yeah, facts, contradicting. Yeah, we contradict ourselves constantly. Here's a card I found for some resources to stand against anti-Asian violence. I'm here for it. I love it. Yeah, share that. Do me a favor, Gabby. Share that link with us on the actual feed as well. You can wait till after class if you want, but I would love to make sure I come back to that, and I'm more likely to come back to it if it's in front of me. So post that on the regular feed for me, please. I definitely want to check that out. I support the police 24/7. Everybody's different. To each their own. Okay. Let's talk about the post real quick for this week. I'm going to exit out of the chat for a second so I can go over here and pull it up. All right. So, I know y'all looked at this. And I know some of you looked at this and had this look on your face. Like, what the fuck is going on here? This is some bullshit, right? I know you did. Good. That's what I wanted you to do. Usually when I have this week, we usually host a debate. And so the debate is always set out, right? So I usually separate the class up into 4 different groups and give them each a controversial topic that deals with the N-word, right? And so the topic is always about whether to use it or not use it. But there's a stipulation that goes along with it to make it a little bit harder, because otherwise everybody would go on the side of nobody should use the N-word. It's such a terrible word. And then as soon as we leave class, it's bumping in your headphones. So which one is it? We using it or we not using it? Is it a good word or is it a bad word? Have we reclaimed it or have we not? Which one is it? So there's a lot of fuss that goes along with it internally that nobody ever talks about because it's so taboo, right? So let's play on the taboo. So I picked the most controversial of all the topics to give you as your post. So the question that you're going to be asking, or asking yourself, right? Why should white people, and white people, remember we mean the people at the top of our pyramid here. I don't have none of my markers up here. Trying to clean up from the guests we had. All my stuff is everywhere. White people. The people who are at the top of our pyramid, right? The ones who own everything. Not just about white-skinned people, but white people, right? The system. Why should white people be the only folks allowed to use the N-word in any form? I'm not going to discriminate here. Just give it all to them. Why not? The reason I picked this one is because, I mean, other than it's obviously the most controversial, it's going to make everybody uncomfortable because it's not something we want to think about. But there are people who believe it. There are people who believe in this, right? The only people who should be allowed to use it is white people, right? So we have to confront that. The reason we have to confront that is because it is the solar opposite to what we generally believe and do, right? We generally believe that, well, the N-word in this particular form with the A is okay, right? That's a good one. The ER is not okay, right? We distinguished against those two things. But only certain people can use it, and white people is not one of those people, right? So it's like the opposite. So it forces us to get out of our own comfort zone, to get out of our own contradictions, and tunnel vision ourselves into somebody else's line of thought. What does this do for you practically? Practically, what this does is think about the construct of like papers and things that you're going to write for your other classes. Think about research that you're interested in, things that you want to learn more about, right? The best, absolute best arguments you will ever make, the most convincing arguments that you will ever make, will fully demonstrate that you understand all sides, or at least multiple sides of an argument, especially the ones that you disagree with. If you just say like, this is bullshit and I don't like this, but this over here, and then you give 15 pages of explanation for why this one thing over here is great, well, that's bias. Just right there, that's bias, right? It's also an incomplete picture. To provide a more complete picture of our arguments, of our issues, of the things that we care about, right? We have to demonstrate a more balanced perspective. So we're forcing balance. We're forcing balance because that is going to force you to be uncomfortable in this. It's going to force you to challenge your own lines of thought as well. So you're going to be using the articles. I think you have videos that are attached this week as well. Whatever I have for you on the syllabus, right? That's what you're using to develop your own thought. The answer to this question is not going to be just within your articles. It's not going to be there. You can look all you want. It's not going to be there. This is something that you have to develop for yourself. Okay? Peer responses. All right, so there are a couple of options for what you can do for your peer response. The first option is throw a wrench in somebody's argument. Just be like, you know what? No. Your argument is invalid. Truly invalid. Not because it made you angry, not because it struck a chord, right? Get your emotion out of it. It's not about your emotion. Disagree with something using something that you've learned so far, right? Back it up. So the thing to remember is that you don't have to change your mind when you're having a dialogue. The point is not to change your mind. The point is for you to stand firm in whatever your stance is, even if that stance changes. Like, that's cool. But whatever your stance is, you should be able to back it up. You should be able to facts and facts and facts and facts. This is why, this is why, this is why. Check this out, check this out, check this out. Just like I do with you every week, right? So you're going to start practicing doing that. So you can throw a wrench in somebody's argument using anything from weeks 1 through 4. Not from week 5. Not from this week's readings. Okay? Or you can agree with someone's argument. Remember, the argument is that only white people should be able to use the N-word in any form or fashion, right? Using your reading video and or something you've learned in class so far, so you can expand out from weeks 1 through 5. Or, same thing as last week. You can call somebody out to call them in. Y'all see it. You know what I'm talking about. When you can tell that someone did not put in effort. You know the difference. And you know it feels shitty when you're putting in effort and somebody else isn't. Yeah, we don't do that here. So, you can continue to call people out. My challenge to you on this one, stop being so personal about it. If you're calling somebody out, that means that you are opening yourself up to be called out too. Right? Take it. Learn something. Grow from it. This shit is tough, man. Nobody said this was going to be easy. College, life, none of it. None of it's going to be easy. But the more you can move through it with poise and control over yourself, because you can't control shit else or what somebody else is going to say, do nothing. You can't control none of them. Right? You can only control yourself. The more you practice this, man, y'all gonna be some phenomenal human beings. That's all I'm saying about it. There is a 50-point extra credit opportunity attached to this. You don't have to come tell me about it. You don't have to ask me nothing about it. Whatever you decide to do, however y'all decide to do it, cool. So the instructions are to team up with a peer or a group of peers and create and post a video of a staged debate. I love doing debates on this, right? So you're going to stage a debate. You're going to post it on band right on our feed that addresses the following. So a debate has at least 2 teams, right? So there's at least 2 points. The 2 points are so that you have 1 point for each team to think about and to argue. Teams can mean 1 person and 1 person. Teams can mean 5 people and 5 people. Teams can mean 4 people and 7 people. I don't care how you do it. It's 50 points of extra credit. So point 1 is why everyone, no exclusions, everyone should be able to use the N-word, but no one should be able to use the terms queer and wetback. Why did I pick those 2 terms? Because they're equally controversial. They have their own strings. They have their own sets of history. They have their own issues that are attached to it. They have their own juxtapositions, right? Come on now. These are things that we do, though, right? We'll say, we can use this word, but nobody use this word over here. You can use this word, but nobody use this one over here. Nah, oppression is oppression. So, why everyone, right? Why everyone should be able to use the N-word, but no one should be able to use the words queer and wetback. Or, team 2, why no one should be able to use the N-word, and everyone should be able to use the words queer and wetback. 50 points of extra credit for that. I can probably get fired for this assignment, and I really don't care. I do it every single semester, because where else are you honestly going to have this conversation about this term? Seriously. That's up to you. How long it has to be, that's up to you. All right, so I'm just checking through this chat, make sure I didn't miss anything important or any questions. I don't really believe in the whole ACAB thing. I've had bad experiences with cops, but it's unfair to judge them as a whole entirely. Nah. I am ACAB. I have a always film the police sticker on my water bottle. No. Because I'm not thinking about the police as individual people. I'm thinking about the police as an institution. The police as an institution was built in response to the freeing of slaves. Keep that in mind. The police were created in order to keep unruly black folks in their place, particularly in the South. An evolution from the slave patrol, which was developed to return slaves to their plantations. Now, you can also look at the history of it yourself and see, even in the badges, right? There's a clear evolution between the slave patrol and our modern day police force. So when I say fuck the police, I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the police as an institution. I don't think the problem is that there are some good cops and some bad. The problem is that the entire police system was built upon the ill treatment of people who aren't white. Right. Will the person being called out lose points? No. No, you're not going to lose points. Because the point in you being called out is for you to take that to do better next time. Right? If somebody is taking the time out of their day to call you out, to help you out so that you can do better, why are you going to be penalized for that? We're supposed to be growing together. So no, I'm not going to take points off for somebody calling you out. Yes, it was. I agree with you. There's been some crazy things that's happened with the police against people who aren't white. The BLM and the exposure of all that is causing restructure. Yes, in all departments because of such. Right, as we saw, especially with like Milwaukee, we saw that defunding. We have divested some police forces, some funding from police within LA County, as well as other areas. We're starting to see more of this. How does debate have to be? Up to you. Basic idea of police sounds fine. People are there to enforce the law. Yeah. But what is it now? I've called out people in my high school because they got defensive about the N-word, as they should, but they were saying the F word. Okay. So you see the point in what I'm doing here. The police also, as an organization, were originally a slave patrol. Yes. So is the purpose of the assignment to determine what we think is the most oppressed group of people? No. Why does that matter? It's like people want to have this oppression Olympics. Like, you want to be a gold medalist in oppression? This is the weirdest shit I've ever heard, right? Like, we fight with each other over who is more oppressed. Why does that matter? Like, if you are oppressed at all, isn't that an issue? So what? Somebody else got a different form of oppression from you. It's still oppression. So no, we as a people should stop caring about who is more or less oppressed and start focusing on the fact that oppression exists and work on that. Why do we care? Crabs in a barrel, remember that? We all at the bottom anyway. We all still trying to get the bottom little pieces together of our lives. The fuck? Yeah, oppression Olympics. Nah, we not doing that. The point in the assignment is to challenge your own thoughts, your own thinking. That's it. It ain't got nothing to do with the oppression Olympics. Right, everybody wants to be oppressed, right? There's that phrase that they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues. Yeah, everybody wants to be oppressed until it's time to be oppressed. Oh my God, exactly. It's so weird. Funny that every time people play oppression Olympics, it's the racists who win. Right. Like, we got rid of affirmative action because white people felt oppressed. I'm sorry, what? Serious, man. And that's my word. Make sure y'all quote me on that one. That's my term, the oppression Olympics. Okay. Give me just a second here. I need to run downstairs and grab my markers. I ain't got no markers, so we can't chat. While I'm grabbing my markers, always notice I've never heard it as oppression Olympics, and it's exactly what I would describe it as. Yeah, exactly. While I'm downstairs, I want y'all to start thinking about and start typing out what you think you know about the N-word. Let's think about it. All right. I'll be right back. All right. Hope y'all wasn't in here trying to steal all my trade secrets. Let's see. So nobody has no thoughts yet, huh? Tell me about this N-word. My family is used as a term of endearment. Yeah, so sometimes it does get used as a term of endearment. I know way too many people who feel comfortable saying the N-word. Same here, for my taste in particular. However, this is not about my taste. Yeah, so we'll put uses. Yeah, so there's like a term of endearment piece people use for it, right? Similar to like bro, right? Okay. I call them out, they get so defensive. Yeah, people get really defensive about it, right? Like it's something they want to hold on to. We want to hold on to our oppression. You know that Olympics thing? You got to hold on to it so you get your gold medal. The N-word was created by slave owners during the slave trade. Sort of. We're going to talk about that. Well, only certain individuals are allowed to use it, apparently. Socially, right? There's a social cap. Or there's a social... there's a social use, right? There's a social use to where it's acceptable and not acceptable. So we'll put a positive and a negative there for acceptable and not acceptable, right? Sure. The N-word is just a degrading term. Sure, some people feel that way, right? And it's transforming into something that is even less racialized, right? So there's like this evolution that's happening. Evolution. Which is decreasing its racialization, right? Sorry, I'm just going back up, make sure I don't miss nothing. It is offensive to black people when saying it is not black. Sometimes, right? So we'll talk about that, right? This social use and the positive and the negative. But that is not always the case. For example, don't bring that shit to me. No. I am nobody's N-word nothing. No. And I'll call you out in a minute for it. However, I also respect my friends who do use it, right? Who do have that as their term. It's just not something that's in my vocabulary in particular. What does that mean for you? That don't mean nothing for you. You are your own person. You are allowed to do whatever you want. My only ask is that you have the information to back up why you do what you do. That's it. I mean, we know how the term was used in the plantations. Do we? Do we know that? We would call someone a stupid nigga if they were lazy or just not living up to the cultural morals and values we don't use now. Yes. So it's time subjective. It's time subjective. And what that means is, as this evolution has occurred, the way that the use has changes with the times. So there is a point where folks are using it to discuss people as lazy, right? There is a time when folks are using it to discuss folks as slaves, right? So it's like changing in the way that it's being used. Today, more often than not, right, it has this double use that more often than not relies heavily on tone and context. Right? It relies heavily on tone and context. Well, I know the N-words spore from anti-blackness mainly in America. However, there are many words in different cultures, like mayate in Spanish. Yeah, I don't know that word. How do you pronounce that? Is it merzin? Or is there another pronunciation for some of those letters? Having the same root. Anti-blackness, sure. The N-word seems to be evolving into less of a racial term, but more of just a curse word. There is some of that element that is present. Rap is making it acceptable to use, and other races are getting checked when using it. So it's heavily embedded in hip-hop culture. Right? It's heavily embedded in hip-hop culture, in the music, in our day-to-day language, right? So that by itself is one of the reasons that we have to talk about it, right? It's deep in our stuff. It's like it's everywhere. Why shouldn't we talk about it? I feel like when people want to come off as more offensive while they are frustrated, they tend to use the N-word to be more intimidating. Yes, absolutely, right? So that'll go in one of those, that negative. Remember, tone and context. Tone and context is going to matter in how we translate the way in which the term is being used. Okay. So this lesson is my perspective. So this is the culmination of information that I have put together from my own set of and series of research, time, videos, articles, interviews, just talking with people, right? Engaging with people, as well as, personal experiences and interactions and all of that. I say that to say there's going to be competing information out there. So what I present to you today is not the end all be all. It's not. Everything that we talk about in this class is not the end all be all. There is no way that we can go through, how old is hip hop? 1970, right? Like 50 years. Ain't no way we can go through 50 years of shit in 16 weeks. Same way, ain't no way we can go through 400 years of evolution in 30 minutes. It's not going to happen. So I'm telling you this because this is important for not only my class, but for your other classes too, right? There's no way everyone can give you all of the knowledge. What we can give you is what we have come up with. And it's for you to take that or not, but to move with it however you're going to move. So with that, let's talk about this N-word. From my understanding, a lot of what you're looking at is a linguistic issue, and that's about it. So let's look at the word itself, right? So we've got generally two endings that we're looking at here, right? With an ER and an A. These are the most popularized terms today. So historically, let's think about that transatlantic slave trade again, right? Well, who was largely responsible for the transatlantic slave trade? Europe. Europe was most responsible. So what does that mean? Europe and Europeans are bringing their language. Let me tell you this. When slaves, or rather when African peoples were being forced into enslavement, right? Because enslavement is a condition and a process, not an identity. Something I'm also checking myself on constantly. When Europeans were coming to enslave folks, they're on boats, right? They're on boats. Let's say here's the shoreline, and let's say here's your boat, right? Because remember, these are large ships, right? These are very large ships here. So they can't go on the water like too far up. All this is real shallow, right? They can't go over here. They have to dock. They've got to dock, right? Well, they're reading a little scroll from on this boat over here in their native tongue, telling the people, hey, we're going to enslave you. And God said we can. Because who are you getting permission from? You're getting permission from the Pope. Because most of these folks are Roman Catholic or Protestant or some semblance of Christian that cares about the Pope and what the Pope has to say. Because the Pope is secondhand to God. So Pope says it's cool, enslavement is cool, the Bible said it's cool, go ahead. Just tell them first. Be nice. Just let them know. They can't understand the goddamn things. Can they even hear you? How far out you gotta be to dock this big ass boat? They can't hear you over here. But they told you. They told you. We're just gonna wash our hands of this. Right? So these folks are bringing their language. Well, we know that romance languages tend to be very visual, right? They tend to be very visual languages. So what are they thinking of? They're thinking of colors, right? So we've got the Spanish conquistadors coming and calling these people negro, right? They're negro. Well, why are they negro? Because they're black, right? Their skin, their color, literally. So race is beginning as very phenotypical, right? It's beginning as very phenotypical. For the French, right? The word is noir. Now, I want you to look at these. So we're talking about folks who are being taken from their native tongue, their native languages, using different languages that they don't understand, but at some point you get called something enough that you know that it might be your name or something, whatever they're trying to get your attention with. Same way that you train a dog to know their name, right? Like my dogs know their name, my cat knows its name, right? Why? That repetition. Well, what are you more often repeating? None of these people are names, right? These, you trying to make these slaves, so we're dehumanizing over here, right? We're dehumanizing over here. We're not going to call you people. We're just going to call you, by the color, by what we see. ASL works the same way. So it's not necessarily trying to be rude, right? It's just the way that the language itself is constructed. ASL is American Sign Language, for those of you who are wondering that. For folks who use ASL, right, it sounds rude to us because socially, right, deaf folks or hard of hearing folks have to visualize what's going on a little bit more than we do, right? So for example, if someone is fat, they're literally going to call them fat, right? Because that's the best way that they have to describe someone. So I'm saying that to remind us that it's not necessarily like trying to be rude or trying to be racist quite yet. It's really just a semantic issue here, like a linguistic issue here at first. All right. So we've got the transatlantic slave trade up and popping, right? Well, we know that a lot of these folks are going to be Spanish and Spanish speaking because of where they're going, right? They're going to Central and South America. Well, Central and South America are already somewhat colonized at that point, right? They're already under a lot of this rule. So that's why it's easy to go there. So think about Columbus, for example, right? So Columbus is Italian. Christopher Columbus is Italian. The Italians didn't want shit to do with him because he's too risky, right? From what I understand, he was like a drunk and shit. He's just risky, right? So he didn't sail for Italy. He sailed for Spain, right? He sailed for King Ferdinand in Spain. So as he's sailing for King Ferdinand, right, he lands somewhere in like South America somewhere. And the journals that he wrote, right, the journals from his first journey, he's talking about how the people are really useful and they're like really good at using the land, and look at this food they're making over here. Like, this is great. Like, our food bland as shit. We need some of the stuff they got. They got these chilies. They got these potatoes. They got tomatoes. Tomatoes and potatoes and stuff like that. Those are not native to Italians. That's y'all peoples. That's here. Spices and things, right? Because remember, that's why they were going to India, right? They were trying to go to India because they wanted spices. Why they want spices? Because the food sucks, right? That's historical to this day, right? We don't put raisins in the potato salad, right? We just never did stuff like that. But they've always been looking for our stuff. So he comes here, he's looking at all this stuff. He's like, this is amazing. He takes that information back to King Ferdinand, who is married at the time to Queen Elizabeth, I believe, who was like a teenager. Yeah, history is gross sometimes. And King Ferdinand is like, yeah, but you didn't do what I asked you to do. So you can go over there and go ahead and colonize for me, or I'm going to go ahead and take your head off. Which one you want? That's why he comes back. Now he's ruthless. Now he's the Columbus that we all hear about. So we hear about his second voyage. Columbus Day is based off of his second voyage, not his first. Read his journals. Now, not the raisins. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Now, why do we care about Christopher Columbus so much, right? Well, we care about Columbus because he's adding to this narrative here. He's adding to this story here. Well, he's adding to the story because he's literally building the foundation. Today, Christopher Columbus's grave is in Spain. I've seen it. It is, like, in person, I've seen it. It's in a huge grand cathedral, right? A Spanish cathedral, which is a huge, beautifully built church. Like, the architecture is phenomenal. And he is raised up on the shoulders of statues of 4 Spanish kings. That's how much they revere him there, right? For discovering America, Well, the America that was discovered was built for enslavement, right? We're building this as a new phase of colonization, as a new wave of ownership by another country, by a monarchy, right? So we know what happens after that, right? The French and the British and all them, they're fighting over the land, and the Trail of Tears eventually happens, and bam, America, right? Yeah. We don't have time to go into depth about all that stuff, right? None of that is actually the point. The point being, this is very historical. And the way that we understand it today has been watered down because we lost a lot of this history because we don't talk about it. So they're coming over here. We've got new language coming. Now we've got the English coming in. The English are coming in, right? And they're like, I want a piece of this. Right? We're England, right? We're Great Britain. We should have some of this, right? With our spot of tea and our scones at noon. We want slaves too. What are we going to do? Well, why don't we go ahead and go colonize America? Sure. So that's what they do. Then we have wars and all of that fun stuff. But the thing about it is they're coming in to language, right? There's language that's already set up by this point among slaves. Well, what is that language? That language is a combination, a constantly changing combination of these Romance languages and of native tongues and of nonverbal communication, like drums and rhythms and things, like beatboxing, right? All those elements that we've talked about before, right? The various forms of call and response, all of that, right? They're coming into language already. So where are they learning the name for these folks from? From the original colonizers. So what are folks calling themselves, right? Well, they're calling themselves what the colonizers are calling them at this point, because you've been dispersed and dispersed and dispersed and dispersed so many times. What else are you going to call yourself? That's your only name left, right? So anybody who saw Roots, right? With the Kunta Kinte thing, right? My name is Toby. Your name is Toby? He's like, no, Kunta Kinte. Toby is a nice name. But they're going to beat him until he calls himself Toby. Right? You gonna cut his leg off because you don't want him to run away. You got to make sure that you display your power and your authority, right? One of the easiest ways to display your power and authority is by having people call themselves what you have decided their name is. Okay, follow me here. We know that this is translating. We know that this is translating. We know, right, because that is the English word here. Right? So it's no surprise when this starts to shift, right? All right, let's go to just for the sake of space, I'm going to write slaves, right? So slave language. What are they calling themselves? Well, they're having some dialect issues at this point, right? They don't know what the fuck they speak anymore. So a lot of it ends up coming out sounding like an A at the end. It's one of the primary first exposures that they have, right? They don't know the difference between the masculine and the feminine, right? Nobody's formally teaching them any of this. They're just taking what they're hearing. Don't worry about the board because I'm going to take a picture of it after we get done, and I'm not exactly sure which direction to move it in. Try it this way, I think. I don't know which way you want me to move it, to be honest with you. I'm just going to leave it. I'll take a picture after. You'll have it. Okay. So slaves are having this linguistic issue here, right? We're also hearing a lot of this, right? So these are really getting kind of mixed in together here. Right? These are getting mixed in together here because sometimes you could say the ER, but not too often. Because in Romance languages, ER is not often pronounced the way that we pronounce ER in English, right? It's usually kind of slid over. So like French verbs, for example, when you have a regular ER verb, you're not saying right? So let me give you an example. What's a regular ER verb? Manger. Right? Manger. This means to eat. This is a regular ER verb in French. Nobody is going to read this as manger or manger, right? Unless you are English speaking. So this is how these terms start to get really fuddled, right? We got the English colonizers coming in with a whole new language, right? A whole new linguistic style, who is now taking these terms and speaking them in their own way, right? Starting to pronounce things more. These folks are getting really confused, and we're just kind of putting all these words together. And now we've got several terms from the same root. And somehow we have convinced ourselves that they're different. We've convinced ourselves that there's a differentiation that is occurring here, when really, from what I have come up with and from the research that I have done, it all stems to the same place. So there's no amount of reclaiming that you can do for a term that is not yours in the first place. The culmination of this is white people's words. This is white people's words. That's what it boils down to, no matter which way you flip it. It's not ours, right? But for us, we also understand that there is power in language, right? There is power in language. There is power in being able to deny someone access to something. That is the same thing that has been done to us, right? And so we kind of took a page out of their book with that. So how do we get to the point where it's heavily embedded in hip hop, and even though there's this linguistic issue here, I'm just gonna write that because I want folks to remember that, right? There's a linguistic issue that's going on here, right? In the way that folks are learning and developing their own language, that we're still constantly doing, right? We're still very innovative with language, right? All the terms that come out, right? How many terms is it for being drunk? Like, come on. It's like 15 terms for being drunk. Just this year, right? Where were we going here? We were going to today. So think about who controls the market, who controls hip hop, who controls the production and distribution of our music at this point, and of everything that is remotely connected to the culture. I was like in my face. It's like right here. I'm just trying to block my stuff out. I can put my little thing up here. Our crabs in the barrel, our people at the top. These are the ones who are doing the okay, right? They do the okay for all of the music, for all of the lyrics, right? Well, why would these folks not be okay with our continued degradation? You don't hear this type of language in other genres. And yet we're still also criminalized for it with that image bite, right? We're not even the ones promoting it at this point. We're just kind of the followers. We just do it. It's too much work for us to challenge. It's too much work for us to, be the odd one out and not do it, not say it, not listen to it, not support. Like, it's too much. We just don't, right? It's easier for us to ignore it, right? And then get angry when white people use it. Well, it doesn't help anything, right? And then why are you angry about something that you don't even know the history of? Why are you angry about something that you don't even understand? What are you angry about, right? What are you angry about? So, like, on campus, for example, like, we see a lot of like black and brown teens in particular who are, using it openly and just out on campus, right? Because it's common colloquial at this point. Well, it got that way because of exactly what Kathy said, right? I think it was Kathy who said this about the music popularizing it, right? Hip hop is popularizing, or has popularized the use of the term, right? It's normalized it. That process of normalization is very important to the way that oppression functions, because that's why we're still facing oppression today. It has been normalized. That's why we are so hard pressed to not say, that having the police as an institution is a bad thing, right? We have to make sure that, well, not all police. Oh, but not all police officers. No, all police as an institution, yes. That's what we're saying, right? But we don't do any of that because we're too afraid to stand in the shit. We're too afraid to stand in the controversy. Just checking the messages, make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, actually, I'm going to switch colors real quick just so I can... All right. So we've got hip-hop using it in the music, right? In the lyrics. Which is given the okay by the folks who own it, right? These are the owners. What do they own? They own the labels, right? They own the distribution. They own the vocal coaching, right? Most of the vocal coaching, most of the songwriting and all of that is owned and operated by them, right? The talent scouts, the venues, iTunes, Apple, Napster, right? That's an old one, Napster, YouTube, Google, anywhere you can find videos, TikTok. That's Chinese. But get the point here, right? Instagram, Facebook. Basically anywhere where you find, listen to, share, endorse music or culture, cultural activities, cultural habits, colloquials, clothes, all that styles, right? Well, we, the consumers, are then saying back to these owners, this is a go. We want to go ahead and keep this, right? We're not questioning or challenging any of this, right? We have reclaimed, we have that issue of reclaiming. Right? We have reclaimed this term and it's okay for us to use. If it's okay to use, if it's so okay to use, and this was someone that I brought up too with someone else on one of our posts, right? If it's so cool, why do we also feel the need to censor ourselves? Why do we feel the need to be uncomfortable with its use, right? If it's so reclaimed, if it's so powerful, if it's not as negative anymore, if it's not really as racialized, like if it's really just not as bad, why do we still censor it? Right? They don't censor other stuff on the radio. They don't censor like ass. What else they don't censor? They don't censor some, like most words anymore. Right? Even like movie things have changed. So PG-13, for example, has shifted a lot. It used to be PG-13 if all you saw was a titty, right? And now it's like that's child's play, right? It's nothing. Same thing, right? Changing with the times. That's all that kind of thing is. But the things that change with the times are also influenced by consumerism, by the consumption, by capitalism, right? We are feeding back that okay. So the point in this is to say, if this is not something you're okay with, well then you need to be more mindful of your actions. You need to be more mindful and more intentional with what you're doing, what you're buying, what you're listening to, what you're saying, how you're saying it, where you're saying it, all of that, right? Then you have to be more intentional, right? If you are on the train of, no, you know what? We have taken this back. And even though I know this history, I'm going to claim that we have taken this back. We're not have taken it back, have taken it over, right? Maybe that's a better phrase. I don't think that reclaiming really fits what people think, right? As much as taking over, right? Like colonizers would do. We have taken over this word, right? And turned it into something else. If you're going to stand in that argument, great. Stand in that argument. Right? Say I'm taking it because oppression, right? Because I'm not going to allow it to oppress me anymore or something like that, right? There's so many different ways that people grapple with their own traumas, with their own interactions with oppression that we can't tell people is as simple as not using it. It's never going to be that simple, right? It's never going to be that simple. I'll give you one tangible idea for the music industry, for example. Let's say that we were to transition our artists into our own production studios. Like we were to buy up a production studio where we were going to try to funnel some of our artists through and say, listen, we want more control over our content, right? We want more control over what is going on within our community and the way that our community is being discussed and portrayed in public, right? So we're going to buy our own studio. We're going to buy our own production agencies. We're going to buy our own distribution. We're going to create our own label. We're going to do what Russell Wilson did and buy the masters up, right? We're just going to be by ourselves. How many artists would at that point be or feel like a need, like it necessitates that they would need to use this term, right? Some people still would. What I think would happen, though, is the way that the term is used at minimum would shift, because the control, once the control is shifted, right, we don't have the same ties to it anymore. When the power gets taken out of it, we won't have the same ties to it anymore. At that point, from my understanding, right, from the way that I'm looking at it, at that point it will start to become less impactful. But yeah, we just ain't got the money yet as a community. We don't have that. Because I notice when I say it around all non-black people, those non-black people start to feel comfortable saying it as well. Yes, you are giving the okay. You are giving the okay. If you are using anything around somebody else is going to pick it up, right? I've said words that I didn't even think people were listening to, right? Like Crystal, for example, she'll say things that I've said, and I'm like, I know you heard that from me, and I've never heard you say that before, right? And she probably didn't even realize that she picked up something, right? But we do it. Like, we all do it. We mirror each other. We mirror community. It's like we talked about last class. That's the way consumerism works, right? You're like made to feel left out if you're not doing something, not saying something, you don't have something, right? So yeah, this is all a test. Well, honestly, it's uncomfortable to say that around people who aren't supposed to use it. Yeah, because I feel like I make them feel okay using it. You do make them feel okay. Yes, that is exactly what you're doing. Is that a wrong thing? Is that bad? It's not for me to judge. I don't know. That's up for you. Okay. So we are an hour and 7-ish minutes in. Questions, comments, ideas, concerns. Is anybody totally fucked up yet? I'm going to circle back to last class as the final thing while you're letting me know if you need anything. And just kind of clarify what I said about Lincoln and these slaves over there. Okay. The Union, let me turn this way for a second. The Union, right, was separated. So at the time that the Emancipation Proclamation was written, the North and the South were two completely separate countries, right? I think you should also include the word bitch too. Yes, absolutely. That's a good one too. The North and the South were two completely separate countries at the time, right? So we've got North and the South, right? The South is fully functioning by itself. It don't need nobody, right? The South is like, I am good. We good, right? Cool. Well, Lincoln, right, who is in his first presidency, is not enjoying this, right? He's like, the South done left under me, right? This is making me look bad as a leader. I don't want, what can we do here, right? We have to fix something, right? For the sake of white people. This is really important to know because Lincoln did not give a single shit about black people. He did not like slaves. He did not like blackness. He did not like mixed people. He didn't like black nothing, okay? I'm for damn sure surprised he even wore that damn black hat with how much he don't like blackness. Okay. Lincoln said if he could have unified the North and the South without freeing the slaves, he would have. So this is why they were still going to war even though the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. Lincoln didn't even believe it. Not only that, the Emancipation Proclamation at this point, we're talking about two separate countries, two separate functioning countries at this time. That's like me coming into your house and saying, you know what? I don't like none of this. I don't like this setup here. You just go ahead and get rid of that. you gonna have a new setup, because this not it. You know, I have a need, and this setup that you have here is not fulfilling my need. You gonna do it? You gonna let somebody come in your house and bark orders at you? Are you gonna do it? No, you're not gonna do it. Who would? Who would? Right? Hence why they're still at war, even though the Emancipation Proclamation is signed and shit, right? So, we've got Juneteenth happening, which is marking the end of the war, right? Juneteenth happens way after the Emancipation Proclamation happens, and is marking the end of the war, right? Which is forcibly getting slaves off of the plantations, right? It's forcibly getting slaves off the plantations. So at no point was any of this a peaceful transition. At no point was any of this as part of the plan to help black people. It just wasn't. It was not part of any of that. And we have to make sure that we are following that historical pattern so that we do understand it. Because like we talked about last class, right? And even hit like historical patterns, right? They matter. There's not a lot of new things under the sun. A lot of things have just evolved from other things. So a lot of the legislations and things, like when we're like shocked that things are not helping black people, like when Obama was elected to president, and all of a sudden there's like, oh, he's gonna help black people. No, he's not. He's the president of the United States. He's not the president of black people. No, that's not how any of this works, right? We start to lose things. And then we start to feed into the ideas that other people are giving us. Like all of those movies and things that we talked, that one of your peers brought up last class, all the movies and things about Lincoln and making him look like he's this champion of enslavement, and he's not. No. Stop letting these people lie to you. My mom finds any type of cussing as ghetto. Your mom must hate me then. I like cussing. You know how I like cussing? Cussing is like seasoning salt for words. It's like seasonal. You just sprinkle a little in there. It's just amazing, right? Or like a adobo, right? You just sprinkle it in there. It's fucking phenomenal. Lemon pepper, Love it. Here for it. Let's see. Me and my friends would say it all the time to each other, but the moment somebody we weren't close to said it, we would get uncomfortable. So I've been guilty of this. Right, we gotta self-check. We've been celebrating Juneteenth in my family for years, red soda and all. I love it. Lincoln was hesitant because blacks were generating a lot of the economy for farms, and getting a new system was something he did not want to do. Yes, that is part of it. So part of it has to deal with the economy itself, right? Enslavement was a huge part of the economy. It was a huge part of building the bottom line for the South, and it was the reason why the South could function by itself as its own separate country, right? Enslavement is the reason. When voting rights were first getting started to talk about, right, when we were looking at like the 3/5 compromise, for example, the reason that it's the 3/5 compromise is because of how many more slaves the South has than the North. The North has slaves. This is not a slave-free zone. There are slaves in the North, right? So the South has more slaves, though. They don't want to give excess power to the South. So we create the 3/5 compromise, where slaves are going to count as 3/5 of a person, right? They're going to count as 3/5 of a person, so that the North has at least somewhat of a fair chance of getting a similar type of vote out of their slaves. That's all that's for. So the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, right? The 13th Amendment to the Constitution that says that enslavement is abolished with the exception of those who have been convicted of a crime. Okay. The 13th Amendment supposedly took out the 3/5 compromise, right? It just became obsolete. It was never actually overturned. The 3/5 compromise was never actually overturned. What do you do instead? You establish institutions that will feed the crime rates, like the slave patrol turned police institutions, that will feed the crime rates, right? Turn things into crime, to criminalize the people in order to control the votes, to not only control the economy, but to control the political air as well. Okay? So you're controlling economy, politics, social, everything, right? Everything. from keeping your system the same and just changing the language around it. That's it. That's all that happened. Man, I know, right? I be having some zingers. Love all you say. The Articles of Confederation were a joke. Yeah, all that shit was a joke. And none of it was for us. None of it. It still ain't today. You know what I mean? To tell me this document from the 1700s? The 1700s. Documents from the 1700s is suitable to tell us how to live in 2021. Why? These documents that were established during times like this with enslaved folks is still our guide today. Matter of fact, Colorado just voted enslavement out of their state constitution like 2 years ago. Yeah. So enslavement is absolutely legal. Okay. So I thought that was important to give a couple of minutes to, because clearly it's not necessarily hip-hop, but as we've talked about, all of these things are related, right? All of these things are just the historical roots to what we talk about and what we're dealing with within the culture, within the music and all of that. So by having more of exposure to that historical perspective, right, y'all get a different type of conversation that will come out of this, rather than us just sitting here and talking about how much we hate the N-word but don't really, and we still gonna use it, but you can't use it. We just gonna buy the song. It's useless, right? But at least this way, you get to create your own perspective, right? Using verifiable information. Or not. Use whatever you want, right? There's a breadth of information out there, but I want to encourage you to go find it. I have fun doing this kind of stuff. People just look at me like I'm fucking crazy. That's cool with me. Because 3/5 should have been revised a long time ago. It should have. Right now, our prison populations demonstrate that about 3/5 of the prison population is people of color. All right, I'm done. I'm not gonna keep upsetting myself. Y'all gonna upset me today. This was actually what I was gonna do my dissertation on too, before I decided I'm not getting a doctorate anymore. Oh yeah, there's that. We'll talk about that another time. Okay, so mind your self-care. I hope that y'all have a wonderful rest of your week. We will talk again. I think we have class on Monday. Don't quote me on that like last time. I have no idea when we're gonna meet up again. It's on the calendar. We'll all figure it out together. All right, everyone, have a great weekend. We will chat soon.